There's this growing side of the left and right that has moving towards more extremist ideology. They're becoming racially conscious. They're against foreign wars, Ukraine and Gaza. And it's sort of becoming an issue where it's literally becoming right now when it's polled with Gen Z, that it's like 52% of Gen Z are more leaning towards that way of thinking. What do you think this is going to do in our country that young people are leaning towards extremism?
Some sort of more authoritarian drift always happens in big democracies. And I keep wanting to believe that our state system will prevent that.
What's your opinion on what you're seeing, the impact of this sort of mass migration, like in Western countries, sort of just changing the demographics?
We need to be able to talk to each other. We have to have a common language so we all understand one another with. I don't care what religion, I don't care what sort of culture is practiced within your home or community. We're the only country founded on ideas that were written down de novo.
Everybody says that life is getting worse, but it doesn't seem like anybody really wants it to get better. You know, wanting your pilot to fail on a flight because you don't like them doesn't make any sense, right? Whether you have a personal problem or not, it's like, well, you want to land safely, and it's in your best interest to make sure that the plane gets back to the ground. But it seems like we're in a country where people hate what's going on. They don't like the president. They don't like the racial tensions, but they don't seem to want it to get better. People seem to want the president to fail. They want people to do poorly, and they almost seem to love the misery. It seems as if perhaps we have an addiction problem in our country, not just to fentanyl and to our phones, but maybe to our own trauma. Maybe we're drunk off of our own suffering, our own pain, our own complaints. The state of the country is quite odd today. And of course, there's an expert that I know who's fantastic, Dr. Drew Pinsky, host of Ask Dr. Drew, who knows a lot about addictions and a lot about what we're suffering with as a country, as he woke up a few years ago and realized, maybe I don't know everything that's going on, and maybe there's a lot more happening, a lot more lies, a lot more deceit. Dr. Drew, welcome to Almost Serious.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I was just thinking, did you see Joe Rogan's latest comedy special where he said, I used to think vaccines were the most important medical advancement in history. I thought the world was round. I thought Michelle Obama had, well, maybe she does. You know, anything's possible.
Yeah, she does,
now.
maybe. Who knows? Allegedly.
Anything's possible. He said, maybe the earth is flat. Vaccines, I don't know about it anymore. I don't know anything anymore. I'm open to so many things I would have been very dismissive of 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It's ridiculous. But as you mentioned in the opening remarks here, I was thinking to myself, you probably had to change the name of this show to Highly Offensive. I think it's time.
Yeah,
I think it's time.
It is time. Doctor, I just want to jump in and talk to you about this, because what I find most fascinating is that you're not retarded. Okay?
I'm not retarded?
No, you're not. You actually are intelligent. A lot of people claim to be smart, but they're not.
Is being not retarded being smart?
Well,
is that the same thing?
I'll ask your wife. Let's see what she says. But it's like,
I'm retarded.
Yeah, I bet you'll hear that. No, but I think better than just being not retarded, I think that people would think of you as a collegiate individual, somebody who has intellect and wit. And yet, over the last few years, like we mentioned in the beginning, it seems like you've completely changed, and not in a bad way, but it seems like there's something different about you. Talk to me a little bit about when this change happened and when you started realizing that maybe things weren't the way they were.
COVID changed everything. Let's face it. There's sort of PC and AC, or BC and AC, before COVID and after COVID. And the fact that my peers behaved the way they did, the press behaved the way they did, much to my surprise, the government has now turned out to behave the way it did. We now know for sure. The way the social media organizations behaved, the way people behaved on social media was all astonishing to me. It was mind-blowing. And I had to make sense of it, and I had to respond to it. The attempts at cancellation that I went through were profound. And it's very hurtful, when you're out there just trying to do good, when people come after you, you just try to help and be good. It stings extra bad. Because I'm not out there just because I want to be out there. I want to be out there to help and do something good, be of service, make a difference in a positive way. I always said that I hope on my tombstone it just said he made a difference. That's it. That'd be fine. And I had to try to make sense of it. First, I had to respond to it. And my wife goes, well, you got a lot to say. You can help people. People want to hear what you have to say. Let's do a Facebook Live. So we started with that. And then it turned into a streaming show. And then that streaming show started being directed towards talking to other peers that had been canceled to find out, because I thought, I've got an interesting point of view. They must know something. And it was actually when I got to Jay Bhattacharya, which was one of the earlier interviews I did, I was like, "Oh my God, this is the guy that had to be subjected to a devastating takedown, according to Francis Collins and Anthony Fauci. This guy's a mensch. He's a brilliant professor. He's a colleague. He's just a great human being. That's the guy you want to cancel? There's something horribly wrong." Horribly, horribly wrong. And by the way, when he announced to me 6 months ago or 4 months ago that he was being considered for the NIH director, it took my breath away. I thought, this is poetic. This is Shakespearean, that these assholes wanted to cancel this guy, will now be their boss. This is justice. Anyway, so I had to really look at everything and everybody very carefully, all those organizations, including my own profession. And I saw weaknesses and problems that I just didn't know were there. And it's made me respond. I've sort of had to talk about it. And the two absolute sort of features, I would guess, or mandates that has come out of it for me is to protect speech, numero uno. 2, protect bodily autonomy. That's it. I will go to the mat for those 2 things now. And prior to COVID, I wasn't thinking about those things. I never imagined they were under threat. Never. Now I have to think about how far do I want to go to protect it? How far will I go? And that's why I'm thinking and talking about different things now. And probably it makes me look like I'm different, I guess. Maybe I am different. I don't know.
I think you are. And this is what I'm interested in.
Does that surprise you that I'd say that?
Well, no, it doesn't. Yeah. Because we're kind of in a day and age where you basically either a loser or you're not, and it doesn't mean it's
retarded
true.
Or not, loser or not.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I've really come to stupid or not too. Be a lot of dumb.
I agree,
and I would never have judged people that way before. Now I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's just dumb. A lot of dumb.
Well, that's what it is. A lot of the smoke screen about the losers, meaning, so it's like you're either part of the losing team, people who are going towards tyranny, going towards this authoritarianism and destruction of our God-given rights, or you're on the winning team. And that's why you're seeing Democrats are teaming up with Republicans, past liberals are teaming up with conservatives. There's like a group of people here are like, hey, this is beyond party. This is actually in terms of, am I going to have the right to move freely, speak freely, and think freely in my country? Absolutely.
And I'm clearer about my own, you say party. I was Democrat for a long time, and then I was independent for a long time, and then I thought I was libertarian for I was always freedom leaning, and then I met real libertarians. Kat Timpf became a friend of mine from Gutfeld, and I thought, oh, right, I have a heart, so I'm not a libertarian. You have to be really harsh to be a libertarian. And God bless libertarians. I'm just not that. And I'm still kind of see myself as independent. And I think that's what the sort of new coalition is. It's not, I think that whatever this new party or system or leaning is, I don't want to call it Republican even or conservative, because that has a bad rap, you know, when even in my mind. I was watching a movie called, my wife we just got into this, went down a rabbit hole about Laurel Canyon, and we were watching this movie called Mondo Hollywood. And in there, it's from the 60s, they were showing these sort of Rotary meetings from the 60s. And they're all these old white men with the skinny ties and the white shirts and the kind of thick courtroom glasses.
Right.
And they were discussing, they were the people I was rebelling against when I was 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I did not want to be that. They were attacking me when I was trying to have free speech on the radio, when I was advocating for things like morning after contraception and things. And I that's where my fight was always. Now, to be aligned with that, it doesn't feel right. It's different. It's a different kind of an alignment that has occurred. It almost needs a new name, but I don't know if we can do that. But I don't know. I don't think of myself as any of those things.
Well, and that's interesting. This is what I want to kind of go into with here. I think that the lot of people, when they say, you know, oh, I woke up, I was red pilled, these kinds of things, they're talking about waking up from something. And what I find is you do wake up and you progress. You sort of look back at your life and you don't even realize ways that you were policing your own speech. You didn't even realize at the time the way people were controlling you or manipulating you or getting you not to talk about certain things. I mean, I look at my career in the past, we're going to even call it that. And I realized, you know, some of the meetings that I would get in where they would check my ideology and maybe make sure I didn't think a certain way. I didn't realize what they were doing at the time, but I realized they were trying to control me and ensure that I didn't speak like the way I do at certain companies, that I didn't talk about the issues that I talk about now. I was kind of interested. You know, you've had a long history in Hollywood, a long history. When you look back, do you have any regrets, or do you recognize any way that you were being controlled, or maybe that you were policing yourself to where you're kind of like, you know what, that wasn't a good thing?
No, that's the thing. I mean, I ran into some trouble. I'll tell you about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But if anything, I was on a daytime talk radio show for a while, and I was continuing my usual moderate approach. If anything, I've been too moderate. I've been not willing to put a bet down because that's my scientific training, to never be sure of anything, to never be certain, to never have any. Certitude is irrational. You shouldn't be certain about anything. You should, but I'm certain about First Amendment. Now I'm certain about bodily autonomy. So there's certain certitudes that will come to you, but being certain about, I don't know, complex issues. I'm always like very moderate, and I was getting pressure I kept getting pressure, not overt, but I kept getting a talk to about, you got to have one side or the other. You got to pick one side or the other. I'm like, it's not me. I'm not. And Corolla used to yell at me about that too. And he's mad at me still to this day that I didn't sort of support some of the things he was saying 5, 8 years ago that I felt were a little excessive, that turned out to be right. I just wasn't certain. I was sort of, so maybe I guess my lack of willing to put a bet down at the time, but I wasn't clear about these things. I just really wasn't. And the circumstance is what clarified things for me. CNN never told me to say anything. Never. I was never, ever, ever, nothing. They would just set it up. Now, maybe how it was set up, you know, we had a famous episode where I had a transgender woman in there with Ben Shapiro. Did you ever see this episode?
Oh, I did, yeah.
You know, and I didn't know who Ben Shapiro was, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't know what his opinion was going to be or anything. And this thing erupted. If you ever go look up it online, it's there. And Zoe Tour hates me now because she's convinced I set the whole thing up. Look, the producers set it up. I'm being told what's coming, who's there, and what the topic is, and we get into it. That was it. But when I used to go on Don Lemon show every night, and during the early Trump, must have been it was pre-2016, right during that election year, during that election time. This is another famous episode. I go in and I'm talking to Don Lemon, and I was talking about, you know, personality characteristics and mental illness in presidents, of which we've had many. We've had many presidents with overt mental illness and with very extreme character pathology, I would say, or moderate character pathology. And some of them are my favorite presidents, like Andrew Jackson and Teddy Roosevelt. Those guys had pathology. And so I was saying, you know, Trump's got his stuff, but, you know, maybe I can't say that it makes a bad president. I was sort of making that case. So the next day, I came into my radio station, and the manager said, the station manager said, "Hey, that was great. Could you do that in 30 seconds for our website?" I said, "I think I could do it in 30 seconds. I sit down, I do 30 seconds. And he goes, "Oh, you know, it's an election time. We have to do both sides. We're a public airways, you know, we have public airways access. Can you do 30 seconds on Hillary?" And I said, "Well, funny thing, she released her medical records this morning. And there was some really serious problem with her health care, in my opinion. And I'd be happy to talk about that." So I got on and I took issue with several of the things her doctors were doing for her. A lot of people don't know. She had a transverse sinus thrombosis, which is a clot in the skull that causes a stroke in the brainstem. She had a stroke. She was wearing these prism glasses for a long time afterward, if you remember, because she had intranuclear ophthalmoplegia, where eyes didn't time right, from the stroke. And they put her on a strange blood thinner. They hadn't done a proper coagulation workup. They had her on armored thyroid for no reason. And I just laid all that out. Next morning, Drudge Report puts on their front page, finally a doctor says she's not suitable for office. I did not say that. Nothing to do with what I said. Her physicians actually answered every one of my issues, every one of the questions I raised as though they were interrogatories, and got the right consults and made the right changes and did everything I raised. But I could tell what was afoot here was a celebrity was in charge of her health care. That happens a lot because doctors get, oh, Miss Clinton, I'm such a pleasure to take care of you. And your weight's a little excessive. Well, you heard the thyroid hormone is, I guess I could give you some thyroid hormone. No, this is bullshit. This is terrible health care. Any event, I could smell that kind of thing going on there. So as a result of that whole thing becoming this major media viral crisis, CNN came down on me like a ton of bricks. Now, then they told me to stop talking, and they were clear about it. My show had already been canceled. The public didn't know that yet, and we didn't announce it till the next week. So it looked like it was canceled because of what I had said.
I thought it was.
It was not.
I always thought you got fired for
nothing to
that.
do with it at all. And I still have great affection for my bosses there. They were wonderful people. Really, they were consummate. They were great human beings and good. They were great.
The new headline here, the shocking headline is "Reasonable person has good things to say about CNN." That's breaking news that I've never heard.
I don't know if
before.
they're still there in the same positions, but I harbor no resentment towards them, except that day was weird. That seemed very weird to me. And then I kept saying, "Let me go on and explain what happened." They're like, "Shut up, just shut up." And that was the last time I was ever on their airways. So that tells you something.
Well, so do you think then that's an indicator that they're sort of in bed with the DNC?
Oh,
or
100%.
Into what way? Do you think it's
Somebody
just ideological, or do you think it's like a deep state, like some governmental employee, CIA, control and trying to like control from the back end? What's your opinion?
Didn't we eventually hear that a lot of the Hillary people had family members in the administrative structure at CNN? I think that's what I remember something like that. It felt like people got called. There were calls made to people like, "What the f is your guy doing here?" And like really angry people, because the guys I spoke to were like shaken. They were like, that kind of thing.
So that is really fascinating to me, because I think people always, make these accusations, but this is the first I'm hearing about it. I didn't even follow at that time. But so Hillary's, administration, they're like getting people involved, or people that are close to them. They get them these administrative roles in the networks. And so they're literally a call away from sort of controlling the narrative.
Look, the same thing happened to Facebook. Same thing happens at Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, Schiff got caught, right? Sending emails asking Twitter just delete, I think is like Rogan O'Hanley or whatever, a big right-wing account for coming against him.
There's a bunch of stuff like that going on. And it's still, look, all over Washington, it's all, these familial relationships are way, way overdone. It's somebody's wife's organization that they're giving money to through the NGOs. Pay attention to that. That's a big part of what's going on. That's the ensconced elite. That's how the elite is ossified. That's the problem here. That's not good.
So let me ask you about that. I mean, in a fascinating way, I want to talk a little about the elite and one example. I've been so disappointed in a lot of things in this administration. Happy about some things, but one of them has been the fumbling of.
By the way, that sounds normal to me. Like I should never be totally happy with any administration of any sort, state or federal. I should have issues, and if I'm totally against, then something's terribly wrong. And if I'm totally for everything, I should look at myself.
Well, and I agree with you. And this is the problem I'm seeing right now with a lot of the MAGA fans, which I voted for Donald Trump myself, but the fumbling of the Epstein file release, right? This has been a total embarrassment to the administration.
Yeah, there's something happened.
Yeah, what do you think's going on?
I have no idea. I would love to talk to Pam Bondi about it.
You don't have any administrators in your ears saying, "Say no idea."
No, I have literally no idea. I'm a couple steps removed from her. I'm going to go in there and talk to some of these people and see if they can tell me, or just at least explain it. Like, you don't have to tell me what's in there. Just explain why you did that. That's all.
Isn't it weird? The whole influencer, hiring a marketing firm, getting sort of safe influencers.
No, that's not weird, because I've been, I was in the White House last week.
I didn't know that.
Oh no, I'm part of that influencer group that they're cultivating.
Were you there at the
Not
release?
at that one. I didn't go to
Thank
that.
God.
But I was there less than 1 week ago, or I was there a couple days ago.
So what's going on with that? I'm interested.
They have a group of young people who were cultivating that. And I think they got over their skis, and good for them, because they're taking risks. It's the same reason Winston Marsalis
from the band,
the Mumford & Sons.
Yeah,
he was in the press pool today. I don't know if you saw that. He's sitting in the front of the press pool. That's why Tim Pool was sitting in the front of the press pool. Same group, same thinking that had the influencers getting the books, the binders on Epstein. It was not played right, that one. They just didn't, because I think they thought they were going to give them everything, and I think there was a disconnect between the young people that were organizing the non-traditional media. I mean, you could end up over there, trust me. It's worth it. They're interested in bringing people in that are willing to ask tough questions. And so Winston Marshall, Marshall or Marsalis? Why am I?
It's Marshall.
Marshall. He's a great guy. He's like one of my favorite people. He asked this morning or yesterday morning, he said, why, do Do you think the Trump administration would contemplate taking political refugees from Britain who were running away from the extreme silencing of their free speech?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And now if you're white there, just to clarify to people, they take skin color into account. So if you're a native white British, you can go to prison. And if you're not native white British or an immigrant, you can get let out with no bail. It's crazy.
And to Carolyn Levitt's benefit, who's also, I went over there a couple weeks ago and interviewed RFK Jr., Basant, Carolyn Levitt, Linda McMahon. So I've met all these people. I've got to touch and feel them. But Carolyn is super, like an extraordinary young woman. And she, to her benefit, looked at Winston and said, that's an interesting idea. We've not been asked that before. I will take it back to the president. And I bet she did that. That's what I like about that administration. They're open to ideas. They're taking everything in. It's not, layers and layers and layers. Just go right to the president, get a decision, off you go.
So then what do you think about this? A lot of critics, I thought this was interesting, have noticed sort of the way that the administration has adopted a lot of online influencers. I mean, a good example.
Yes, that's this group I'm telling you about.
Well, but also like Dan Bongino, for instance, even though he has past work in the Secret Service, obviously one of the most popular right-wing show hosts, now is deputy director of the FBI.
Yeah.
And you see there's a Graham Allen, right, brought in as well. He's a big podcaster. Obviously, I think he might even be an ex-serviceman himself. But like there has been a real adoption of a lot of pro-Trump media into the administration, and people raise
media or media figures actually in the administration, or both.
Yeah, both. Like I mean, like those are two big media figures brought in, and then I saw another young influencer I know is like just brought into Homeland Security, and now it's interesting.
So I have mixed feelings about that. Okay, so it's one of the things I would say I'm not totally on board with, but it's a mixed sense, which is, yes, I worry that I think Donald Trump looks at people that are successful in media as being ultimately successful. In other words, I think he puts more, I don't know this about him, but my sense, having talked to him a little bit, is that he sees somebody who's been successful on television, because he's been a billionaire developer and he's been on television. I think he thinks that the television was a more substantial thing, which is, I don't think that's true myself, but I think he really puts a lot of value isn't even a strong enough word.
The gravitas?
Yeah, the people who's been successful in TV, that means something, that they're special. There's something about them where they could succeed in everything, right? Which is not true. And there has been a professionalization of our government administrations, right? And the government has gotten so complicated that there's a reason for that. You need that kind of training. So I'm worried about putting people that have been successful because they turned a microphone on like you and I and gotten an audience in positions that are quite complicated and might need some professional training that they may not have. I worry about that. On the other hand, the reason I like Sarah Palin is I liked her story. I like the fact that she's sitting on the boards of a hockey rink and she goes, I could run this government, this state better than those guys, and then did it. And I like, this is a government of the people, by the people. So as much as possible, I want to see just people in there running things. I want to see that. That's what this was supposed to have been. And if we've grown or we become an organization that can't be that, then I'm sort of sickened, but I don't like it. So I'm mixed feelings. I'm all over the place.
Well, and I want to jump to something really important in a second. But guys, I want to remind you that many of you know that in this day and age, men actually are weak and they're not acting, not just on impulse, but they're not really leading, right? You see this in marriages, women are leading, and you see families falling apart. In some cultures, men aren't even staying with their kids. Men aren't willing to fight for their country. I'm not talking about just on the battlefield, but not willing to stand up for free speech. Now, the reason why this is largely happening, a big thing, is not just a cultural shift. There are environmental toxins, there is waste, there are problems, and there are also factors that are genetic that are being passed down that are affecting testosterone levels in men. Now, really, there's only like two main ways you're going to be able to get your testosterone up. Honestly, number one, it's lifestyle change. You've got to be exercising. You've got to be working out. This is very important. But two, you can supplement. Now, you can take pills and that stuff usually digests in your gut. So the problem is that you usually either need to inject some sort of testosterone treatment into your butt cheek, or you need to use a sublingual, like carbon delivery method under your tongue. I'm not selling you needles. I'm talking about Man's Edge. Now, Man's Edge has fenugreek, NO2, IGF. These are shown to increase testosterone, sometimes by up to 86% in test subjects. But you're not a test subject. You want everything together so that you can actually find the improvement you need. Raising your testosterone using Man's Edge right now will also help you to have better libido. I'm not going to be crass. If you're over 30, you're not getting boners in the morning. You're not, interested in having sex and these things. something might be wrong with your T levels. So make sure that you pick up a bottle of Man's Edge right now, which is a patented carbon delivery method to go right into your bloodstream, under your tongue without any needles. Buy one, get one free right now with auto ship. That's 50% off when you get 2 bottles. Plus you get an additional 10% off using my promo code Elijah. So when you buy 2 bottles, you basically get 60% off the entire purchase at tboostnow.com, promo code Elijah, E-L-I-J-A-H. That's tboostnow.com, promo code Elijah. Make sure that you pick up a couple bottles, support yourself, support your health, support the show, and be a better man at tboostnow.com, promo code Elijah. Speaking of being a better man, you know,
hold on. I gotta soften some of your language here a little bit. You don't get a boner in the morning. I would say we call that nocturnal tumescence.
Oh,
if you're not
very
experiencing nocturnal tumescence,
I just
not getting a boner in the morning. If I said that to a patient,
if you don't wake up hard and
you're not getting a boner in the morning, well, it's okay. Sorry, sir.
Yeah,
no, a nocturnal tumescence.
No losers, nobody retarded, and boners. We're on a very educated track record here. But being on the inside, you do fascinate me on this end with a lot of these criticisms. I wanted to ask you about something that is controversial, and since this is a controversial show, I find it to be fascinating. You know, there's this big split. Are you familiar with Candace Owens?
I know.
Yeah, so there's this big split, right? Even Daily Wire had a split. You know, they fired Candace Owens. They sort of pushed out Brett Cooper, 2 of their biggest hosts. I know they're kind of struggling a little bit, as any network would. I don't want them to fail. That's not my issue. I really just want us to win. I want as many fighters on the field as possible. But there's been a real ideological split on the right between what some are calling like the woke right, or this.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Or like there's this.
Am I woke right?
No. They wouldn't call you.
I've been called that.
You're moderate.
That.
Really?
Yeah. I forget why. I don't know what to make of all this stuff, but because I'm moderate. If I
crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm a scientist, right? And so my opinion on vaccines is kind of nuanced. It's not, that's all bad. It's all good. No. It has utility in certain situations when the risk reward is warranted, blah, 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 based on the literature as I've got it. That's the way I make most decisions. And so that's not comfortable for people. See,
well, that's actually almost the opposite of that. That's why it's fun. No one even knows what terms mean.
Yeah.
What I really wanted to get on is I don't want to talk about Israel. I don't want to talk about the Jews. I don't want to talk about the war in Gaza. What I want to talk about is that, focus on this idea of you being moderate, and then finding out later that you're not moderate on some things that you are absolute on.
Yes.
There's this growing side of the left and right that has moving towards more extremist ideology, right? They're becoming racially conscious. They're against foreign wars, Ukraine and Gaza. And it's sort of becoming an issue where it's literally becoming right now, when it's polled with Gen Z, that it's like 52% of Gen Z are more leaning towards that way of thinking.
Which way?
Towards the more extreme racial consciousness, against Israel, against the war in Ukraine, where older people are obviously, pro-military industrial complex. What do you see about the future impact, or what do you think this is going to do in our country, that young people are leaning towards extremism on both sides, but particularly even in the Republican Party? This is rather new. They're leaning towards this more authoritarian, pro-fascist sort of nuance. And
I thought we were getting over that. You think it's coming, but it's still going?
The polls show that it's Gen Z is increasingly favorable of totalitarian ideas and authoritarian ideas. These are people under 25.
So we have Gen X, millennials, and then Gen Z?
Correct.
And the Gen Alpha or something?
Yeah, my kid's a Gen Alpha, yeah.
And they're to what age now, Gen Alpha?
Maybe 12, 13? I mean, I'm just guessing.
I kept hearing that Gen Z was more moderate, didn't care, was if right-leaning, if anything. The fact that they would want a totalitarian... I mean, I fall back on history when weird things like that happen. I would just try to understand where this stuff comes from and how it gets going. I mean, there are some. I mean, I'm reading a book. Mark Andreessen gave a list of books on Joe Rogan. I immediately got all of them essentially, and the one I'm reading right now is called The Machiavellians. And in that book, there's various political philosophers sort of represented there. But in one, they're saying that some sort of more authoritarian drift always happens in big democracies. And I keep wanting to believe that our state system will prevent that. Our state system is so different than everything else. And our local practice of democracy is different. That's what Alexis de Tocqueville noticed when he came here, right? You know Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville?
No.
Okay, so you need to read this.
Yeah.
So Alexis de Tocqueville was a French aristocrat that came over here ostensibly to study the penitentiary system, because we had this system of penitentiary, that was the sort of the envy of the world. Like criminals were put in for periods of time and rehabilitated and brought out and were better. I don't know how we did that, but he wanted to look at that. But he really was here to really study this new thing that he thought was going to take over the world called democracy. And when he got here, he got it all right. And the one thing he noticed, he was worried about the tyranny of the majority. He didn't imagine a tyranny of the minority, which is a new thing we've invented. But he was worried about the tyranny of the majority. He was worried about the amount of lawyers we have in this country. He predicted that Russia and the United States would be the two great world powers in the 20th century. He just was clairvoyant. But what he really saw was that the reason democracy in America worked was he called it the local practice of democracy. Everybody participated in their classroom, in their city, in their county, in their state. And that's what was different about us. And the state, and we were supposed to be a coalition of state. The federal government was not supposed to be a big part of our life. That's where we went off the rail. And to the extent that states are able to be autonomous and be functioning good governments again, that protects us a little bit against that kind of authoritarian stuff you're talking about.
Well, let me ask you that then, since he talks about this sort of civic engagement, right, setting us apart.
Well, you say civic engagement, but the idea of democracy then was not that well understood, and the fact that people were doing it locally was sort of astonishing at the time.
Well, and this is where a big issue comes up. Sometimes, you know, sort of like the English, I always laugh where they're like, you know, really wanting to bring in Islam, but then also fighting for gay rights. And you're like, well, look, I'm sure you have a lot of Muslim fans. If you're Islamic, whatever, that's your life. But obviously Islam is not tolerant of homosexuality. And so inviting your city to become completely Muslim and then wondering why they don't want gay flags being flown anymore in the city. Well, that's because you changed the culture. You brought in different people. They got into government, and that civic engagement is sort of what has now changed the laws and the policies of your land. And I see right now we have this mass immigration, right? We have this both legal and illegal across the West. Yesterday was just the Canadian elections, and we saw them still remain liberal, stay pro mass immigration. It's not popular to fight the illegal immigration. The Conservative Party didn't win. I have noticed that one of the main downsides or main impacts of legal immigration we don't talk about is that when ethnically areas change, civic engagement actually goes down, and participation in democracy, both in school boards all the way from city even up to state, decreases. Do you think, what's your opinion on what you're seeing, the impact of this sort of mass migration, like in Western countries, sort of just changing the demographics, both legal and illegal, and it seems to be across the board, and sort of changing our democratic system?
Right. So much like language, which I think it's a huge mistake not to require a common language. You can have as many languages as you want, but we need to be able to talk to each other. And in California, we for years pretended that we could have multiple languages going there. We can't. We can have them going, but we have to have a common language that we all understand one another with. And I believe we have to have a common philosophy of what we're doing, why we are together as a state or a county or anything else. I don't care what religion, I don't care what sort of culture is practiced within your home or community. Ultimately, we have to have and we have always had in this country. That's why whoever immigrated here kind of got to participate, because this is the only country founded on ideas. You're aware of that, right? We're the only country founded on ideas that were written down de novo. They weren't handed down. They weren't cultivated across many generations. A bunch of guys sat down, old white men, I'll give you, but they sat down and they based on the best analysis of all the political theory of the time, what best form of government would likely thrive, help people thrive and grow and prosper. And that we should all sign up to it if we're here. We should all agree that's what we're doing. Otherwise, there's a problem. If you're not signing up for the common principle of this country, go to another country where we can sign up. I wouldn't want to be in a country where I didn't agree with the basic principles. I disagree with certain things. I want to go fight about it in the government, but the founding principles we have to all agree on. We do.
I agree with you on that. I think what's hard for me is that I think I want to be liberal, but I'm not. I
was for many years.
Yeah, and so I'm from LA, so are you, and that's where I grew up. That's where I was born.
I still think of myself that way. Remember, I was fighting the right most of my career.
Well, and now I'm fighting the right, and I don't even know why.
Yeah.
I'm like fighting the right, and I'm right wing. But what I'm finding here is that like a lot of people don't believe in those principles, and like when you see certain things, like I'm against anti-Semitism. I don't think that's a good thing. But then you see these guidelines being adopted in South Dakota, here in Florida, that sort of change free speech, right? It's this it's the IHRA, is that what it's called? I think. Yeah, IHRA guidelines that they're pushing. They're in Congress. They're pushing these guidelines. So they want to combat something that's fine. Go ahead and combat this. Or you see like at college campuses, you see selective fighting of speech, where you have all this anti-white, anti-Western ideology that's actually toxic and making people not believe in those principles. But then when they start getting anti-Semitic, you start seeing this fight towards taking away funding and making the colleges do something. And it's working, in my opinion. Taking away the funding is manipulating these universities, making them fall in line. I feel like we don't apply our liberties and our principles equally. I feel like we've gone from some people are getting treated poorly, so we need to try to get better. And we went over the ledge. And now we're treating some people worse again and some people better than other people. And there's this real uneven application. And I think it's making a lot of young men, particularly young white men, and just young straight men in general, very, very angry.
Yes, I agree with that. I just agree. I think it was a well-meaning effort that went too far, and I don't know where you draw the line. Because I would sign up to the effort to try to set the scales right, try to get there has been some mistreatment of certain people, and by the way, we need to be better students of history too. What I'm laughing about is the real mistreatment that we did of black people was in the post-Civil War era, not slavery, which no, I'm not going to diminish how serious that was. But the extraordinary violence of the Reconstruction era, most people don't even know about, and it's been collectively erased from our consciousness because it was so horrible. Frederick Douglass himself said, "I would gladly take back slavery because we gave up the lash for the shotgun." Lynches, murders, rampant in the South during Reconstruction, and that was the Democrats, and that was the horror. That was worse than anything else. And we just forgot about that, move on, let's focus on slavery, which is bad. It's an easy thing to focus on. But it's just, we need to really reconcile what we did and when we did it and really get realistic about where our excesses were and try to make things better where we can, that's all. But not do it at the expense of our principles.
Well, yeah, and there's so much more we could talk about, but I wanted to kind of end on this. Every podcast that I do, I do it because realistically, a lot of women watch my shows, but I make these shows to help young men better understand the world, better understand their life, so that they can be better leaders, better thinkers, and go out in the world and actually make a difference. And you're older than 20. Obviously, you got a couple gray hairs.
How dare you?
Yeah, you're more over to 21.
Yeah, I'm over 20. Yeah,
it's 21-year-old, fresh on the club. On a personal level, to the people listening and to the audience, what advice do you have for the young angry men? There's a website called Angry White Men, and it's a leftist website that just attacks white people. What about straight people out there tired of being demonized, and they see gay people basically sometimes committing like sexual assault, but they're on floats, they're allowed to because they're gay, or they see a lot of this mistreatment and this unequal distribution, and they're getting angry, right?
Yes.
And we don't know what to do as young guys. Some guys go the wrong way and they, commit mass shootings because they hate people, or, some people end up killing themselves, right? Because they feel like they're so hopeless, there's nothing they can do. As somebody who's been wealthy, been successful, managed to get through life, has been open and honest, changed, been happy with your life, what advice do you have to the young angry man out there how he could improve his life, or what he should be doing to get back hold of peace and get control of his life?
I hope this comes out in a cohesive way. So we are actually living in a pretty good time. Things are not as bad as they seem. If you stay focused on the basics, which is family, education, health, make sure you're not hungry, angry, lonely, tired, find meaning, be of service. These things are critically important. And in terms of meaning making, read broadly on particularly things. If you have any weakness in your education on history and philosophy, you need to understand the great ideas. You need to understand how we got here. You need to understand the human experience, and you need to focus on your relationships. Relationships need to be stable, long-term. You need to value the people in your life and cultivate relationships. Let me put it this way. When Freud came to this country in like the 19-teens and 20s, apparently there's a story, maybe apocryphal, but I've heard it several times, that he got off a ship. The reporter was there to meet him and said, "Dr. Freud, what do you hope to achieve here in America?" He said, "Well, I hope to come to an understanding of the difference between serious mental illness and ordinary misery. Ordinary misery is good. Lean in, lean in, lean into misery, lean into anxiety, lean into work. This will set you free. You'll develop resiliency. You'll develop competencies. Do not hide from stress. Don't the phone, maybe hide from that, because that's not really leaning into anything. But lean into challenges, and things will kind of tend to work out. And things are not as bad as they seem when you compare the present moment to other moments of history. They could get bad. Don't know that they won't, but I don't think they will.
I appreciate that, Doctor. You know, I want to remind you guys, if you enjoyed this talk, don't forget that we have a couple other sponsors as well. You can also pick up the wellness kits from the wellness company with amoxicillin.
I'm on the board, the medical board with them.
Are you on the medical board?
Mm-hmm. I'm their chief patient officer.
And these are great kits, right?
Great kits, great organization. We are just, I am so bodily autonomy. I want patients to have everything they want and need. Medical freedom, I'm all about it. And this is part of that.
Yeah, and this is right there. You see it in the middle. Comes with Z-Pack, ivermectin, and
I'm on the road now. I'm going to Europe next week. We have the travel pack, which I kind of invented. I sort of put it together, and so it's all stuff that I make my patients take with them. And my wife and I love it so much. We both took one, so we have two of them with us. But you don't need. You need one.
Yeah, you only need one. But if you want to get two, we'd appreciate that.
There's a lot of other stuff there on the website. Go to twc.health in your case, right?
Yeah, / almost serious.
Yeah. And but there's a lot of other. We have a lot of other great products there. So.
Yeah, and listen, I'm going to tell you guys this as the honest truth. I just want to remind you, even if you have health insurance, sometimes the pain in the ass of just getting to the doctor, sometimes
there's no reason you should do that. You want to spend $2,500 in an urgent care, or do you want to spend $80 for our kid or something?
Yeah, something affordable.
Like, this is ridiculous. You know how to use these medications. Plus, we have telehealth backup. We have a manual kit. There's AI. Look, this is ridiculous. You should have access to these products to use freely.
Amen.
Humbly.
Picked it up, by the way, promo code SERIOUS for 10% off today. Doctor, you're a fantastic person to speak to. I'm so sad that we don't have more time, but you're a very busy guy.
You're going to come on my streaming show tomorrow.
Yeah. We'll talk then. But I just want to know, if people want to listen to you, maybe they're a younger viewer, they're not familiar with your work, what's the best place they can keep up with you on the internet?
I mean, at Dr. Drew is my Twitter handle, Dr. Drew Pinsky on Instagram. I don't do a lot of Instagram. That's sort of more haphazard. If you go to drdrew.com, everything is there. Dr. Drew, ask Dr. Drew on Rumble. I love you guys to come over there because we do a streaming show. Most of what I'm passionate about shows up on that streaming show. But there's some of the things I'm doing when I go to Washington, do interviews with people and things that will also go on my Instagram and other places. So you can find that stuff there. Fantastic, Doctor. Thank you so much again for coming on. Thank you. Thank you to the rest of you guys watching. Thank you for supporting. Don't forget, you can join our locals for free. That's the easiest way to support the show at ElijahSchaefer.locals.com. My name is Elijah Schaefer, so that's good. It's my locals. Have a great rest of the week, as always. May God bless the United States of America. I'm signing out.